Welcome, everybody, to NorthStar Community, a place where we look at all the hurts, habits, and hang-ups in our lives and try to get on that journey of recovery so that we can eventually have a rich, full, meaningful life. So just for you guys that are local, we meet on Friday nights at 6:30. We have moved ourselves from the gym to the multi-purpose room, so you can still park in the back and just come up through the elevator to your left and you'll find us. And so that's working out good. We still have full meals for you if you come, and so don't eat before. And then also we meet on Wednesdays at 6:30 in the multi-purpose room as well. And that's a little more defined support group. Right now we're talking about codependency, which I'm sure none of us online know anything about. And so it's good. It's been very helpful. I know everybody's real excited about that. So NorthStar Community is a supportive, empathetic, loving environment for anyone who's struggling with hurts, habits, and hang-ups. And when I say struggling with hurts, habits, and hang-ups, which means that those hurts, habits, and hang-ups have taken over our lives, and it's hard for us to live our lives without being destructive to ourselves and others. The other good part about NorthStar Community is that we do say that God and Jesus is our higher power, not in a in a way that's judgmental, but in a way of love and grace. And I think if you really get to know Jesus and really study him, it's just his love is just amazing. So we keep scoring ourselves a lot because of our toxic shame. We loathe ourselves. We see ourselves as inadequate or unworthy or all those things. And that's what's so important when we can come to know about God and his love for us and his grace for us and his mercy. It's really us that keeps the score, not God. So I think that today we're going to continue to talk about overcoming toxic shame because, A, if you're like me, I'm a little hard-headed. And so when I hear uncomfortable subjects, I have to go from denial to processing it to finally accepting it, and that usually doesn't happen in a day. So it's good to understand toxic shame. We talked about it last week. We talk about it again just because I really think this is the subject of subjects for recovery. When we are suffering from toxic shame, life's pretty tough. And, I know people both ways. I know people that don't get in life because of their shame, and I know people that overfunction in life because of their shame, and both are destructive. Our goal is rich, full, meaningful life, and when we're living in toxic shame, we're not going to experience that. So I'm going to read Psalms 51 to you. This is David. Now, again, for you that don't know David, King David is one of the icons of the Old Testament. Much of Samuel, the books of Samuel are written about David. The Psalms is attributed to David, so he's rather important to us. And I like how Eugene Peterson, who wrote the Message, described David, is he said, looking at David's life is not, we don't want to look at him as a pattern of how we should live, but in fact how we do live. And that's important because David truly was this wildly talented, smart, he was a great warrior, musician. I mean, if you're looking for definitions of Renaissance men, he probably was it. The problem with David, though, was that he also was very impulsive, and he made lots of mistakes in his life. And probably one of the sadder things about David was he proved to be a great king, but he proved to be a bad father, is basically what it amounts to. His household was a wreck. A lot of it due to his inability to be a good and decent father. He created lots of chaos. We know him from killing Goliath as a child, and pretty amazing. And then we knew that he was one of the greatest warriors ever. But yet he would make bad decisions over and over. Probably one of the bigger ones was God clearly told David, he said, I want you to only have one wife. And David went, okay. And he ended up having like 20-something, which created all sorts of problems. So what makes David great, though, is the mistakes he made, and some of them were very large, but he also was very quick to acknowledge it. And that's what made him so, I think, why he's described as a man after God's own heart. And we can learn from this. And guess what I'm trying to say to a lot of you out there? I doubt if you've done a lot of things David did. I mean, he killed a lot of people. He caused a lot of people to die. He did all sorts of things. So whatever you've done, I'm going to guess you're probably not as extreme as David was in some of the things he did. So this is David writing, and he's been caught again. And I think this is when he writes Psalms 51. This is after the prophet has gone to him and accused him of having the affair with Bathsheba and basically murdering her husband. And he's been trying to hide it. He's been thinking nobody knows about it. And then, of course, the prophet confronts him on it, and this is him writing after that. So, and this is the Message version, so it's going to be a little more updated to our language. Generous in love, God, give grace. Huge in mercy, wipe out my bad record. Scrub away my guilt. Soak out my sins in your laundry. I know how bad I've been. My sins are staring me down. You're the one I violated, and you've seen it all, seen the full extent of my evil. You have all the facts before you. Whatever you decide about me is fair. I've been out of step with you for a long time, in the wrong since before I was born. What you're after is truth from the inside out. Enter me then, conceive a new, true life. So David's clearly telling us that we need to face ourselves, look at ourselves. And when we have toxic shame, that's kind of hard to do. In toxic shame, we kind of are guilty of doing a couple things. One is we try to hide all of our shame and not live life, or we try to live a wildly over-the-top life, trying to run from our shame. So David continues, bring me back from great exile. Put a fresh wind in my sails. Give me a job teaching rebels your ways, so the lost can find their way home. So again, he's talking about, let me recover, and then let me be a role model for others. Commute my death sentence, God, my salvation, God, and I'll sing anthems to your life-giving ways. Unbutton my lips, dear God, I'll let loose with your praise. Going through the motions doesn't please you. A flawless performance is nothing to you. I learned God worship when my pride was shattered. Heart-shattered lives ready to love don't for a moment escape God's notice. So I hope you really hear that last part, and I guess that's why you're online or sitting here with me, is that you know that life as you know it isn't working well. There's too much shame going on. There's too many destructive behaviors going on. I'm eating too much. I'm drinking too much. I'm doing things I shouldn't be doing. I'm hiding. I'm denying. I'm all these things. And none of that works. And we've tried it. So I think in many ways, toxic shame is part of the pre-step one, where we see ourselves as, where before we see ourselves as powerless, and that something in our lives has become uncontrollable. So we have to understand what toxic shame is compared to healthy shame. So here's the key to toxic shame. We internalize a harmful self-image about our inadequacies. So I may not be good at plumbing. Well, that's a good one, because I'm terrible at plumbing, right? If I try to plumb, things will be worse when I'm done. There was one leak when I started. There'll be 3 leaks when I'm done. But you see, that doesn't mean I'm a bad person. But toxic shame would tell me I can't plumb, thus I'm a bad person. That's what you got to get through to you, is how devastating toxic shame is. And it's not real. But we live like it is. So we internalize a harmful self-image of our inadequacies. Now, of course, for many of us, we know our childhoods were terrible, or maybe we've had trauma in our life since we were children. But for many of us, we grew up in traumatic, abandonment-type homes. Well, what do you think you're going to do? As children, we don't have the wherewithal as adults. So this is something I fight with all the time with people, is we try to actually tell ourselves that we actually believe what it was like to be 8 years old. And I'm telling you, you don't remember it anymore. You don't remember how little you were. You don't remember how powerless you were. You don't remember that whatever adults did around you, you assumed it was right. When the fact was, it probably wasn't. So as a kid, you have to get this through your heads. As a child, what do? We blame ourselves for the problems in the family. We blame ourselves for the unhappiness of my parents or lack of parents, all that stuff. So we just don't remember that. We think we do, but we don't. So what do? We internalize our shame. And either then we start running from ghosts or we start hiding from ghosts. But this is what we do know. You'll never have a rich, full, meaningful life when toxic shame is owning you. So let's talk about healthy shame for a minute. Healthy shame is important, and it has purpose. What it does for us is it helps us to keep on the road that we want to be on. It helps us to feel bad when we don't live our values. It helps us to feel shame when we do something wrong. Shame is here to help us so that we don't keep doing the same things over and over and harming ourselves. Shame is probably why you're online with me right now or sitting here, because you feel shame about things you've done in your life. So that's a good thing when it helps you get better, but it's not a good thing when we internalize it. So we want to feel bad when we do something wrong, but we don't want it to become internalized to where we're bad. So toxic shame becomes this deep-rooted inadequacy. It's normal shame that has become internalized. So what's one of the biggest things that creates complex PTSD in us? Complex PTSD is that we were in a traumatic situation ongoing. But what's the key to it? We couldn't get away from it. That's what drives so much of the past traumatic stuff in our lives. Well, guess what? When we have CPTSD, don't you think probably toxic shame is going to be pretty big in there? So what we have to start doing is we have to start letting go of this childhood stuff so we can have our lives back, so we can be who we really are, not this damaged person that we were growing up with. And so one of the big problems with shame, toxic shame, is we magnetize mistakes, and of course then we internalize them, like we already said. We feel worthless, we feel subhuman, we feel like just a total sense of inadequacy. And then one of the ways we know we're doing this is, I don't know about you, but when I'm not feeling good about me, I'm not very happy about others doing well. So when I find myself resenting others' success, I know my shame's too high. But you know what? Here's the whole key to it. With toxic shame, we really can live some pretty awful life because of the shame. So there's 3 ways to describe our shame, and a lot of us have all 3 of these. Some of us have more than others, blah, blah, blah. So one is atrophist, and that means that we grow up seeing ourselves as different, of course, in a flawed way, not in a good way. I don't grow up going, well, I'm glad I'm smarter and better than everybody else. That's not what we're saying. We're going, oh my gosh, everybody else got together. I don't. How come it's so easy for them? It's so hard for me. Why am I so bad? Why are they so good? Why am I so ugly? Why are they so, blah, blah, blah. You know the story. The problem is what we do is we slowly but consistently self-destruct from within. We grow to despise ourselves. We grow to despise others. We can isolate. We live our lives in despair and self-hatred. And basically, we just never get out of the way of ourselves. The second one is glass ceiling. This is where we get stuck with mediocrity. Now, we want to be average, average, normal, all those things. We all get that. I mean, what's that? There was that hilarious survey. They asked college students to rate themselves, and 72% of college students rated themselves above average. You get the point. 72% not real. So anyway, with glass ceiling, we try to be good, but we can only accept mediocrity in our lives. If we do better than that, we do something to sabotage it and get it back down to where it belongs. Basically, I think the way to describe glass ceiling is we are thoroughly average because we cannot accept anything but that. We're not comfortable in any other place. I think back on, I've coached a lot of athletes in my life and still do, and I find this is one I got to fight with a lot with some of my really good ones, is this one. They just, hard for them to accept being really good. Or if they are really good, they don't enjoy it because it's just not comfortable for them. And that's something I have to work at all the time, is getting people to be comfortable, and athletes in particular, them being comfortable being really good at something. And and again, it gets back to with toxic shame, what happens is, again, use myself an example, is the plumbing example. Well, I can't be good at everything. I'm pretty good at some things, but there's a lot of things I'm not very good at. There's a lot of things I don't even know about, right? But I need to get comfortable with that and be good at what I'm good at. Because I don't care what you say. We're given different things. We're all given different gifts. We're given different skills. And, the great saying about a fish is a genius in water, but you ask it to climb a tree, it looks pretty stupid, right? So if a fish has toxic shame, or fish do have toxic shame, I don't know. But if the fish can't climb the tree, then that's all it sees is it can't climb a tree. It doesn't even acknowledge how good it is in the water. That's where toxic shame gets us, right? And then the third one is never enough. That's the one I absolutely relate to myself, is that we have a sense of inadequacy, that we feel that we always need to be better than we are. We always need to be improving. Now, make sure you hear me. Personal development, becoming more knowledgeable and stuff, becoming better. I certainly need to learn more and more about recovery. I need to learn more and more about better counseling techniques, all these things. But what happens with toxic shame is I'm never enough in a shameful way. I don't know anything about anything. I am not an expert in anything. I'm terrible at everything. Woe is me. I'm terrible. I need not do this anymore. That's what happens with toxic shame. So we will try to do everything right and never make mistakes. We are driven by a burning need to improve and to become good enough one day. So we're never good enough as we are. Because of feelings of inadequacy, it doesn't change my improving and becoming good enough. So I can continue to develop those skills, but I'm never going to be good enough. So even if I get really good at some, I don't enjoy it. It's like the athletes I coach sometimes. Some of them just have a real hard time with that. So, here's the deal. I hate to break it to us, but we're not God. Sorry. I don't know if I wished I was, actually. We're not God. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to get hurt. We're going to hurt other people. We are not unlimited. So shame makes us take a long, hard look at ourselves and be more careful next time. That's a good thing. It reminds us that we have limits. I cannot do certain things. Like, for instance, if I'm in recovery, this is kind of an overly simple one, but if I decided that alcohol is destroying me and I've lost control of it, it's probably not a good idea for me to drink again, right? Shame tells me that. Shame says you don't want to be hurting people and hurting yourselves anymore. You can't drink. And when you do, you feel terrible, right? That's shame, right? So here's what the deal is. We all make mistakes. We're all human, and to be human is limited. We can't do everything. We are finite. We are needy, and we're prone to mistakes, and it's okay. That's part of who we are. So get rid of perfectionism. Perfectionism kills us. It's one of the great toxic shame builders. And we just have to keep seeing ourselves as limited. But toxic shame belief says to us, you're flawed as a person. You're more flawed than other people. And you know what? You have no limits because you're either not going to try or you're just going to live with bravado and destroy yourselves and others. And then my core identity becomes my shame, my sense of internalized inadequacy. You know why? Because I'm covering up my pain. Unresolved pain. And I walk around with a sense of worthlessness, and I have this sense that I'm always failing and falling. It's a wonderful way to live, isn't it? So shame gives us realistic limits that we need to be careful. We need not do certain things. We need to be human. It's okay. But without shame, we create elaborate fictional fantasies of power, success, fame, glory. If we don't know our limits, we have no direction. We try to be everywhere at once. We try to be awesome and special. We try to be jack of all trades. Of course, you know what happens with that. We end up being a master of none. Shame is what tells us our limits and signals our direction. When we feel shame, sometimes it might be a hint to us that we're headed in the wrong direction. And the good part about healthy shame is we can use our energy more effectively and not waste ourselves on goals or that we cannot reach or things we cannot change. Become realistic. It's okay. It's okay for all of you out there, me included. You're not great at everything. It's okay. But my guess is you're really good at some things. And when you're not living in toxic shame, you can even get better at some things. But you don't have to be great at everything. It's okay. And so what do? We either live with this toxic shame where we don't put ourselves out there and we live these lives of mediocrity and we see ourselves as never enough and we're decaying from within and we're just doing nothing but destroying our lives and we're drinking too much and all the things we do. Maybe I'm online too much. I mean, think about it. When I get depressed, I feel bad about my life. The last thing I want to do is go on Facebook and see how everybody's happy and doing great. And guess what I do when I'm depressed and sad? I go on Facebook to punish myself, to make my toxic shame feel even worse. So always remember two great statistics. If you're ever bored, look up the journal Humans and Computers. It's a great journal. A lot of it's kind of like, okay, boring, but something's really good. So they found that the average selfie placed on Facebook is taken 3.5 times before it's placed there. Does that tell you anything about how unreal selfies are? The spontaneous selfie, but it's actually been taken 3.5 times. And that 72% of all submissions on Facebook are positive, right? So we're not out putting there, had a big fight with my wife last night, feeling pretty miserable. It's the happy family with the happy face and everybody's happy, right? So when I'm depressed and I'm feeling really terrible about myself, where's a better place to go than social media to help destroy me even more? Well, that's what we do. Or maybe the other great statistic is, I think this is hilarious, it probably shouldn't be, but it is hilarious anyway to me, is that we are so caught up on our phones now that early childhood injuries are increasing because the child is having to create more risk behaviors for the parent to acknowledge them. So if little Jimmy's jumping down on the sofa, the parent don't even notice that, but when little Jimmy decides to jump off the second floor landing, we might look up for that, but it might be a little late at that point. But the point is, all this stuff is about toxic shame. We just see ourselves as unlovable, and we do all the things destructive from there. So here's some examples of too little, too much. So that's not true, but I see myself as a scrawny little guy, right? I've been picked on, people have made fun of me, so I never, ever think about doing anything like going to a gym to get better, to get a little bit stronger, be more fit. That's one side. Or the other side of limitless is I go to the gym, I train 6 hours a day, and I take steroids and all that stuff. You see how toxic shame is all driving that, right? Or how about the people who are very timid, meek, live with resentment and bitterness, but would never tell you that, right? I'm fine. Any of you recognize that one, right? Are you upset? I'm fine. No, everything's good. No, why would you ask me if I'm upset about something, right? So you got that. That same person gets online and becomes mean, nasty, and cruel. Do you see, again, toxic shame all the way. I feel weak. I feel scared. I'm afraid to talk to people. I get in my car, and I'm mean and nasty, right? Those are toxic shame at work. If someone cuts you off, people, 97% of the time they didn't mean to do it. Just want to break it to you. But if I'm feeling toxic shame and I really despise myself, I loathe myself, and I see myself as inadequate, people are cutting me off on purpose because they see what I am. Well, a low life I am. Do you see how toxic shame drives us? We got to figure out ways to respond to this. And again, you hear this all the time. What is the number one thing you need to recover? You need to face your pain. If you don't face your childhood trauma, you don't face all the shame you feel about that, if you don't face the things you've done wrong because of the trauma before, blah, blah, you get the point. If we don't face it, we never get well. Well, guess what toxic shame? We talk about addictive thinking all the time. Addictive thinking's job is to keep us from using. To keep us using, not from using. We want to, addictive thinking is going to say to us, I don't know what you're going to do today, but I tell you one thing you can do. You can do your addictive processes, whether that's drinking, online, pornography, gambling, you name it, shopping, right? Like none of us who ever buy Amazon on a daily basis, right? Anybody recognize ourselves there? But the point is, addictive thinking says, I don't care what you're going to do, you're going to do that today. Well, toxic shame does the same thing. Toxic shame says, I don't know what you're going to do, but we're not going to face our pain. We're going to act out. We do all these things, either too much of, too little of, or all in between, because that's who you are. You don't deserve to do well. You don't deserve to be happy. You don't deserve to be satisfied. What you deserve at best is mediocrity. Even then, I'm not sure you deserve that. Oh, happy day, right? So the moment that we can start saying to ourselves that I am okay, I do make mistakes, I do dumb things on a regular basis, but you know what? I try to do it in ways that I'm human, not perfect. I always like to tell people, I always think this is helpful, I've found it's helpful for me at least, was in our behaviors. I break behaviors into 4 categories. One is, I do the right thing for the right reason. I do the right thing for the wrong reason. I do the wrong thing for the right reason, or I do the wrong thing for the wrong reason, right? Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I can reside in right thing, wrong reason, and wrong thing, right reason some of the time. If you understand being passive-aggressive, which I can be sometimes, I can be pretty good at right thing, wrong reason, right? But I have to acknowledge that, have to see it instead of deny it. If I have to be perfect, then we're not ever going to really get I'm not going to get where I need to. So we have to have some self-compassion. We have to see ourselves as maybe in some ways we are a little bit worthless in how we've lived. We have insecurities that dog us. We live all the time in. We have to face our shame, and we can't become addicted, but many of us do because of that. So self-compassion is about awareness plus mindfulness. You have to start saying to yourself, I do not have toxic shame. I am not this bad. I am human. I make mistakes, but I can do better. I can accept God's grace and love. How many of us, I think this is so critical, and I actually believe this, and if you actually believe in grace, you believe this. There is not a scoreboard up in heaven with you failures and good. I don't believe that God ever is looking backwards at our lives. He's looking at us now. So we can let go of that. I don't care what you've done. You can let go of it. You can move forward. But if you hate yourself, if this inadequacy is so ingrained in you, you can't get past it. So we need to be mindful. We need to take time. You know what? If you want to commune with God, if you want to feel His love, you got to spend some time there. I hate to break it to you. You don't have to do I always love the Martin Luther quote. Martin Luther, the great reformist from the 16th century, said, I got much to do today. I'm going to be so busy. I got these meetings. I got this. I got to do this. I got to do this. I may not be able to spend my 4 hours in prayer meditation today. Not about you, but I don't spend 4 hours, and I never will. I can accept that. But I probably can do 2 minutes, probably, or maybe 3. Do something to be mindful, to look at God's love. And we also have to live with gratitude. If you live with gratitude, in many ways, you're seeing God in action because you start seeing life different. So let's talk about worthless for a moment so you understand what I'm saying here. Someone comes to me and says, I am a worthless you-know-what, and I blah, blah, blah. Sometimes it's true, but it's not you internally, but it's how you're living your life. So a good quote here by McGonigal, he says, so yes, you really might be inadequate in real life. Your life has been a failure. And it's because all along you've had this same feeling of not being good enough from the first issues in childhood through adolescence, school, work, and now. It's spiraled downhill to the point where the issue is not that you feel bad, that you are literally bad. Your life is literally inadequate. Well, we can again, do we want to say, oh, we all want to go, oh, that's not true. You're a good person. Yeah, well, you are a good person, but you may not be living a good life. You may not be living as a good person because of our toxic shame. So all he's saying there, and I agree with, is face it. Face it and do something about it. The harsh truth is, we all may be worthless in some ways. Our toxic self will create that in us. We'll see ourselves as worthless. Again, if you have unresolved trauma from your childhood, you feel worthless at some level. Sorry, but you do. For all of us that have had sexual stuff happen to us as children, we feel particularly worthless and shameful. But we don't have to live there. Doesn't make any sense for any of us to be living our lives dysfunctionally with toxic shame about something that happened to us 30 years ago that we didn't even do. We were the victims. Does that make sense? That's what we do. And for some of us, we were the bad guys. We can let go of that too. We can move on. Either way, it doesn't make sense for us to live in toxic shame, walling in the mud with our trauma from before. We can't turn the clock back, but we can move forward. So we don't want to live the self-fulfilling prophecy of us being worthless. How about insecurities? Oh my goodness, insecurities, man. I'll bet you if I ask all of you to give me one, you could give me one really fast. Is your nose too big? Your eyes too crooked? Ears too large? That's just the physical stuff we see, right? What about the internal stuff? Insecurities are not real, but boy, do they feel real. They feel like they are absolutely, positively it. If we're not careful, our insecurities become lifelong and they become permanent justification for inadequacy. Think about when you look in the mirror, what's the first thing you see? As adults, I can promise you, you're not sitting there going, man, I am getting better every day. I am better looking than I was, right? I always think it's so hilarious, but it's so true. Like I work with kids. I whip the camera out. They cannot get in front of that camera fast enough. They will push people out of the way. And I've taken pictures before, like for stuff, and if they're not in the picture, they're walking around, all sad. Get a bunch of adults together, it is like a bunch of rats on a sinking ship. Man, you pull that, everybody flies as far as they can away from the camera. And it's like you have to force people to get into pictures when they're adults. That's all about our insecurities, isn't it? How we've determined what is, I guess, attractive and not attractive. But think about all those internal insecurities. They can be so brutal sometimes. And they just aren't real. I think about, I'll pick on myself again. So I lived, breathed football. I still love college football. If you would have told me I got to play football every day, I would have done it, and I've been thrilled, right? So, of course, my dream was to play football in college, right? And I grew up in Nebraska. For you guys that may know, Nebraska back in the time was awesome. And, of course, every young man in Nebraska wanted to play football at Nebraska. Well, being 5'8", probably not going to happen. And not only was I 5'8", but I also didn't run very fast. So those kind of combined didn't work well. So I played college at a smaller college. And so I think I was always the second to the shortest on the team. I was never shortest, but essentially I got so much grief for being short. And, so in that world, I was really short, right? So what do you think I assume? When people see me now, what do you think I assume? You all look at me and go, oh, he's the short guy, right? Well, the fact is most people go, no, I don't really think that about you. I mean, maybe after you said it, but, right? They don't even think about it. But, I can remember I'd walk into the locker room, some of my teammates go, I remember when I was your height, I think I was a sixth grader or something I caught so much grief for it. And, I tried to laugh it off and all that, but it did bother me. And it was something that I carried with me as an insecurity. But that's not real. I'm healthy. I'm relatively smart, all that kind of stuff. Isn't it silly that I would carry that with me and see that as a flaw? Makes no sense, but it made a lot of sense to me. right? I guarantee you, if I ask each one of you in here, you'd all tell me something you immediately think about. So the next thing is we got to face the shame. Emotional repression is extremely common, as we all know in recovery, because a lot of us have a lot of pain. We face some stuff most people shouldn't have to face. But you know how, again, I'll say this over and over, it's a gift in the end if you'll take it and make it that, because you're much more empathetic, you're tougher, you understand how life isn't always fair and easy and all that. But if I'm carrying it around as shame, all it does is create more and more problems, and it creates a whole bunch of pain and misery as I continue to overuse substances and all the other stuff we do, compulsive behaviors or getting our 33rd broken relationship, all trying to not face our pain, but to ignore our pain. It doesn't work. And I hope we're hearing here the theme is we have to stop internalizing our inadequacies. Face them, fix them, or move on from them, right? So one of the things we love to do is we love not to feel anything, right? There's a term for it, it's called alexithymia. Alexithymia means that I am incapable of describing how I feel. So that means I can't feel joy too, you get the point. Yeah, I can shut off all the pain and all that, but guess what? I don't get to feel joy either, or satisfaction. Neither one of those make a whole lot of sense. So think of our brain, oversimplified here, but think of our brains broken into two places here. So we got the neocortex, that's our logic, cerebral processing, that's where we do our engineering and our accounting and all that stuff. And very important. I mean, we have to be good at that. And then our limbic system is responsible for emotions, senses, memories, motivation, right? So human element, more the cerebral element. So the problem is, what we do is when we get too much pain and toxic shame in our lives, we start to do a neurogating, which means we slam the gate shut between the two, right? So what happens is then we start living our lives as alexithymia. We can't feel, we don't feel, we couldn't describe how we feel. It wouldn't be possible because we don't want to. We don't want to feel the pain. We don't want to see the toxic shame in our lives, right? So we have to open the gate, guys. We cannot be a whole person. A rich, full, meaningful life will never happen with the gate closed. And it's so easy to do. So we're kind of talking about pre-step 1 here in the 12 steps. Other things became more powerful, controlled my life, and until we can acknowledge that, we're not going to open the gate. So, excuse me, simple things. We have to become mindful of who we are, where we are, and how we are not facing our pain. We have to trust God enough to believe that He's there for us. I know a lot of us have been very harmed by religion and religious people, but that is not God. God loves you. I just can't say that enough to you. We have to find groups. We have to find people to help us, like NorthStar, AA, all those groups. Help us face the pain and the ongoing pain, and help us connect. We keep talking about, again, what's the 3 rules for getting healthier? Get healthy people in your life is rule number 1. Rule number 2, if rule number 1 doesn't work, try rule number 2, get healthy people in your life. If those 2 don't work, try rule number 3, get healthy people in your life. You will not recover without it. You can sit there and tell me, I've had people try to tell me over and over, oh, I did it on my own. No, you didn't. You have to have people in your life. Professionals, groups, friends that care about you, not the ones that want to keep you dysfunctional. There's a lot of them out there because of their own toxic shame. And you look at, I always tell people, I wish you would, if you really want to understand Jesus, read the parables. Again, it just helped me so much to see him. Always loved and admired him, obviously, but after reading those even more, his theme is the same over and over. You people out there who are blind to you, who are mean and nasty because you won't look at you, are in far bigger trouble than the people who get it, right? The woman at the well, the harlot that came and washed his feet, the woman who was going to be killed for adultery. I could go on and on. And I think the great story, the prodigal son, which I'm assuming if you don't know it, go read it, it's Luke 15, is the greatest short story ever told. It is so compact with so much. And Jesus very clearly tells us in that parable, I always kind of relate to the prodigal son. The fact is, a lot of us are the other brother, angry, mean, doesn't feel anything, just mad at the world, right? The prodigal son got it. He realized how stupid he'd been and how shameful he had been and how self-centered and selfish and addictive he'd been. He got it. That's when he came back. That he got past his toxic shame and went to shame, and that made him make good decisions. But the brother, who obviously had toxic shame about all sorts of things, he was angry, resentful, bitter about everything. He didn't get over it. That's us when we live in toxic shame. We're the brother who's angry and mad, not the prodigal son. So the gift of power, I'm going to end on this, I promise. I'll go fast here. So what we have to see is our powerlessness. It's the gift here. That's our step one. By admitting powerlessness, we have nothing left to fear. We no longer trying to uphold false standards or maintain a false image. We are no longer trying to control and be perfect. We have stopped trying to justify our actions and create excuses. We embrace healthy human shame and admit that we are imperfect. That's a freeing experience, guys. A lot of us don't know what that means because our toxic shame tells us we're so inadequate, unlovable, unlikable, and all the other lists we have. We can't do that. The fact is, we are humble to the core. We have nothing less left to lose, and thus nothing left to fear. By feeling the pain we're trying to avoid, we free ourselves from the menacing grasp of all the actions we have spent. And guess what we do? We will find freedom from this when we do this. For toxic shame, this means admitting you're imperfect and never will be perfect. It means admitting you're flawed like every other human being. Sorry, guys, I hate to break it to you. You're not God. Living our lives in a humble state, we learn to actually there's nothing painful about it. Our fears about not being good enough and being imperfect are completely irrational. We start to break down our associations between imperfection, inadequacy, and pain. After spending time in this, we no longer have that fear. We no longer have the paralyzing doubts of inadequacy. Doesn't that sound good? We can do this. We have to be conscious, mindful of what we're doing. We have to become aware of it. We need healthy people in our lives who tell us when we're being dumb, but also there when we're doing the right things. We need groups to help us to see what we're doing with other people who absolutely gone through this. If you come to NorthStar, I can almost guarantee you cannot bring up something you're thinking or doing that the rest of us have already done. I've yet to see that happen yet. So take some actions. Clean up your house if it's a mess. If you're not showering, shower. Whatever you need to do. Get control of your life. Get outside. Talk to people. Find your healthy friends. Get rid of the unhealthy friends, the ones that want to keep you toxic. Shame and inadequacy are self-centered emotions. We have to get out in front of people. And just for a moment, think of this for a moment. I don't know about you, but this motivates me. Not only with me, but with everyone else. Whenever I meet someone for the first time in NorthStar, my first thought is, they're going to be a great mentor someday. Visualize that for a moment, that someday you're going to be that mentor. You're going to be that friend to someone else who's struggling with toxic shame because you recognize it, see it, and you empathize with it. Think about that. And then the last thing is increase your serotonin. I know this sounds silly, but a lot of people are depressed and anxious, have low serotonin levels. Depression stops us from taking action, right? We all know this. I describe depression as running against the river. If say, I need to make that call today, my phone is way over there, it weighs 12,000 pounds, and I got to somehow make myself get over there. So I probably won't. That's what depression does to us. Low levels of serotonin helps our toxic shame stay in place. High grade levels of serotonin reduces our need for validation and external validations. It increases our healthy social interactions. So how do we do this? Exercise, be mindful, quit isolating. I don't know how to say it to you. Keep your chin up. Did you know that smiling, just the physical act of smiling like this, actually increases serotonin, even if you don't feel it? I'm telling you, you got to get your serotonin levels up. But I'm big on exercise. You got to get yourself out there. Get in bright lights, get in the sun, all those things. So I know I've been long-winded today, and I apologize. But this is such a big subject for all of us. So in conclusion, God loves you. You are not God. You are not perfect. You never will be. Face your pain. See how your inadequacies are driving you. Get rid of your insecurities. Put them in realistic fashion. You are not cursed. You are not stupid. You are not inadequate. God loves you again. So at NorthStar, we always close with the prayer of serenity, and we'll do that again today. Again, if you're suffering, if you see this talk, you hear this toxic shame talk, and you go, "Oh my gosh, you've just hit me between the eyes." Talk to somebody about it. Get past it. You don't have to live this way. You can always call us here at any time. I'd love to hear from you. And my number here is 804-746-5081. You can also email for you that would never think of, because you're so inadequate, would never call me, because that would be bothering me and messing up my schedule. We don't want that. So if you don't want to bother me, you can email me at csimpson@wgva.church. All right? So let's close with the prayer of serenity. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace. Taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. Trusting that Jesus will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy in the next life. Amen. Thank you, everyone.